Hello and welcome! My name is Regina from Leelalicious, and today I'm going to show you 4 different ways of making coconut flour bread. All of these recipes are gluten-free and dairy-free, and I'm also including paleo options as well as low-carb keto options for all of them except for the banana bread. First, I'm going to show you 3 sweet quick bread recipes. We're starting with banana bread, pumpkin bread, as well as zucchini bread, and then finally my most popular coconut flour sandwich loaf. And just before we get started, let me remind you to please hit the subscribe button as well as the bell so that you get notifications whenever I upload a new video. And now let's get baking. Just 4 super ripe bananas is all that's needed to make delicious sweet banana bread. So let's get started with those bananas right away. You want really ripe bananas that are like completely yellow with lots and lots of brown spots. Maybe they're all the way brown already. As long as they haven't turned moldy on you, they're fine. They're good. They're gonna give you lots of banana flavor and lots of sweetness for your bread. Mash up those bananas. I like to use a potato masher, but you can also use a fork. Then to the bananas, add 3 eggs. I like to make this a 1 bowl recipe. So I add the eggs straight to the banana and I whisk them up a little bit on the side with a fork instead of dirtying a separate little bowl. Next up, we need 1/3 cup of nut or seed butter. And you want the all natural kind that has just the nuts or seeds and maybe some sea salt, but no sweetener, nothing else added. You can use peanut butter. But if you want to make a paleo version, use nut butter like almond butter or cashew butter. And if tree nuts are an issue, you can use a seed butter like tahini or sun butter. And the last of the wet ingredients is 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil. Stir all of the wet ingredients together until they're smooth and evenly combined. Now onto the dry ingredients. I add them right on top of the wet mixture. First up, we have 1/2 cup of coconut flour. And then add 1/4 cup of flax meal. The flax meal gives this bread a really nice texture and structure, but if you don't have or don't want to use flax meal, you can also use psyllium husk or ground chia seeds. And another alternative would just be using almond flour or just a little bit more of coconut flour, maybe 2 tablespoons. And then add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. Fold in those dry ingredients until they're nicely incorporated into the batter and you have no more pockets of dry flour left. Add-ins for this banana bread are optional, but I really like contrasting textures in all of my food, so I'm using both walnuts and chocolate chips for a total of 2/3 cup of add-ins. You can skip them, you can use only nuts, you can use only chocolate chips, that's totally up to you. Just gently fold in those add-ins and your batter is done. Prepare a loaf pan by greasing it or lining it with parchment paper. Fill the batter into the prepared loaf pan and smooth out the tops with a spatula. Then sprinkle a few more of the add-ins, either chocolate chips or walnuts or both, on top. Bake your banana bread in a 350-degree oven for about 15 minutes. Once the bread is done, let it cool in the loaf pan until it's almost completely cool. Once the bread is at room temperature, invert the pan to remove the loaf. Slice up your banana bread and enjoy as is, or you can spread some peanut butter on top. Personally, I like to toast the slices. This like slight crunch on the outside is absolutely delicious. You can store the banana bread at room temperature for 1 to 2 days. And if you haven't finished it in that time, move it to the fridge and it will last for about 5 days. Whether you're in fall season right now or not, this is a delicious breakfast treat, dessert, or a snack year-round. Let's get started right away with the batter. Crack 3 eggs into a large bowl. To the eggs, add 3/4 cup of pumpkin puree and 1/3 cup of sweetener of your choice. You can use honey, maple syrup, or a sugar-free sweetener. Next up, 1/3 cup of nut or seed butter. I'm using peanut butter. You can also use almond or sunflower seed butter here. 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Whisk these liquid ingredients together until well combined. Now we're adding the dry ingredients on top. First up, 3/4 cup of coconut flour, 1/4 cup of flax meal, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder as raising agent. For the ultimate fall flavor, add 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, cinnamon can be substituted in a pinch, and half a teaspoon of salt. Stir the dry and wet ingredients together until evenly combined. And as final step, fold in the add-ins. You can use nuts, seeds, or chocolate chips, totally up to you. I'm using a mixture of chocolate chips and pecans here. Now prepare a loaf pan by lining it with parchment paper and add the batter into the pan. Use a spatula to even out the top, and then you can sprinkle on some more nuts or chocolate chips. Now bake the pumpkin loaf in an oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 50 to 60 minutes. You know the loaf is done when a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. Another way to tell if the loaf is done is by pressing into the tops, and if they jump right back, you know the loaf is done, but if an indentation stays, you know you need to bake it a little bit longer. Remove the baked pumpkin loaf from the oven and let it cool in the pan to set up. Then you can invert it onto a cooling rack, remove the pan and parchment paper to let it cool fully. Slice up your pumpkin loaf and enjoy. Personally, I love these slices toasted with a thin layer of nut butter spread on top. And there you have it. This is how you make a healthy coconut flour pumpkin bread. Let's get started with the zucchini. We need about 2 small ones. Start by cutting off the ends and then grate the zucchini on the coarse side of a box grater. The next step is optional. If you want, you can squeeze the grated zucchini in a cheesecloth or a clean kitchen towel to remove some of the excess water. But I've also made this recipe with just grated zucchini, and it works as well because coconut flour is just so absorbent it can handle this extra water. Put the zucchini aside for now while we continue with the rest of the batter. Crack 3 eggs into a bowl. To that, add 1/3 cup of sweetener of your choice. I'm using honey here. You can also use maple syrup or a sugar-free liquid sweetener. Next, add 1/3 cup of nut or seed butter. I'm using peanut butter. You can also use almond butter, sunflower seed butter, or tahini. Pour in 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And that is it for the liquid ingredients. Combine them with a whisk or hand mixer until they are uniformly combined. And now we're adding the dry ingredients on top. First up, 3/4 cup of coconut flour, then 1/4 cup of flax meal, 2 teaspoons of baking powder as raising agent for our loaf, and then for flavorings, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon or pumpkin pie spice and half a teaspoon of salt. Now stir the batter to combine the dry and wet ingredients. Now finally add the grated zucchini. It's about 1.5 packed cups, whether it's squeezed or not. And 3/4 cup of your favorite add-ins. You can use pumpkin seeds, nuts, chocolate chips, totally up to you. Fold these add-ins into the batter until evenly distributed. Now prepare a loaf pan by lining it with parchment paper. I find it works best if I use a long thin strip to cover the length of the pan and a short wide strip to cover the width. Add the batter into the pan and spread the tops to even it out. I'm adding some pecans on top here. You can also add chocolate chips, pumpkin seeds, whatever add-ins you had. You can also sprinkle a few on top. Now bake the zucchini loaf in an oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 50 to 60 minutes. The loaf will be done when a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. Another way to tell if it's done is by pressing the tops, and if it springs right back, you know the loaf is done. If an indentation stays, you know you need to bake it a little bit longer. Remove the baked loaf from the oven and let it cool in the pan for about half an hour to let it set up. After that, you can invert it into a cooling rack, remove the pan and parchment paper, and let the loaf cool completely like that. Now the cooled loaf is ready to slice and enjoy. Personally, I love this zucchini bread best by toasting a slice and spreading a thin layer of nut butter on top. This healthy zucchini loaf lasts about 2 to 3 days at room temperature on the counter, about a week in the fridge. You can also wrap up the loaf airtight and store it in the freezer for several months. to show you how to make coconut flour bread 2 ways. The first method is quick and easy. It's done in the blender. It only takes a couple of minutes to whip up the batter. The second method is a little bit more involved, but it's so worth it because it creates the fluffiest, lightest bread texture ever. So let's dive right into this method. We're going to start with eggs. Separate 4 eggs. Place the egg whites in a small container where you are later going to whisk them up. The egg yolks can go in the large bowl where you are going to mix up the entire batter. When the eggs are separated, to the egg yolks add half a cup of flavorless oil. I like to use avocado oil. You can also use light olive oil or refined coconut oil. Even virgin coconut oil works. And add 1/3 cup of milk of your choice. I like to use unsweetened almond milk. If you like your bread to have a sweeter flavor, you can also add a tablespoon or 2 of honey, maple syrup, or sugar-free sweetener. This is totally optional. Now stir together all these liquid ingredients until they're well combined. And on top of the liquid ingredients, we're going to add the dry ingredients now. First up, half a cup of coconut flour. It is so important with coconut flour that you don't dip the measuring cup into the container of flour. This will condense the flour and you'll end up with way too much flour. So don't dip the measuring cup into the flour. Instead, use a spoon and lightly spoon the flour into the measuring cup until it is full. This actually goes for all flours, but it's especially important for coconut flour. Add the coconut flour to the bowl together with 1/3 cup of flax meal. You can also substitute a psyllium husk or ground chia seed or similar. Optionally, add 1/4 cup of tapioca starch or arrowroot powder. This makes for a very fine crumb texture in the bread, but it's a totally optional ingredient. Don't add it if you're making low carb or keto bread, and it will still come out delicious and hold up beautifully. Also add 2 teaspoons of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. Stir all of these ingredients together until the liquid and dry ingredients are thoroughly mixed and a cohesive batter forms. Set the batter aside while we whisk the egg whites. We're going to whisk the egg whites until they're completely stiff. I'm using the whisk attachment of my immersion blender. You can also use your hand mixer or even a stand mixer. Keep whisking those whites until they actually turn white. They will more than double in volume, and you know they're done when you can turn around the container and nothing comes out. They're completely stiff. Add the stiff egg whites to the rest of the batter and fold them in gently. You don't want to deflate the egg whites. The air in the egg whites is what makes this bread so fluffy and light. So just very carefully fold them in without deflating. Now we are ready to bake our coconut flour bread. You need a loaf pan and either grease it lightly or line it with parchment paper so the bread doesn't stick. Fill the batter into the loaf pan, smooth out the top, and sprinkle it with seeds of your choice. I have a mixture of chia, ground flax, and sesame seeds here. Cover the whole top with seeds. Now bake the bread in the oven preheated to 375 degrees. So now onto the quick and easy method of making this batter. If this method of separating the eggs and beating the egg whites is too involved for you, this next quick and easy method is for you. All you need is a blender. To the jar of your blender, add the liquid ingredients first, meaning the eggs, oil, milk, and optional sweetener. On top of that, add the coconut flour, flax meal, optional starch, baking powder, and salt. It's important to add the liquid ingredients first. This way the blender can incorporate everything much easier. Now close the blender jar and turn it on a low setting to combine everything until it's thoroughly blended and evenly combined. Simply pour the batter into your prepared baking pan and top it with seeds of your choice. I'm using a mixture of chia seeds, ground flax, and sesame seeds. Bake your bread in the oven preheated to 375 degrees. It will take about 25 to 30 minutes for the bread to finish. You'll know it's done when a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean, or you can also just gently press into the tops, and if it springs back quickly, you know your bread is done. Let the finished bread cool for about 10 minutes in the baking pan, then invert the pan and finish cooling the bread on a wire rack. There are two ways of slicing this coconut bread. If I'm just going to spread some nut butter on top, I slice it regularly, but if I'm going to use this as a sandwich bread, I cut it into 3 large pieces vertically, and then I cut each big piece horizontally into 4 slices. This gives you more surface area when making sandwiches. And there you have it. 2 quick and easy ways of making delicious coconut flour bread. I know you'll love it as much as our family does. Thank you so much for watching and baking along with me. Let me know in the comments which recipe you would like to make first, or maybe which one you're making right now. Also, like the video, share it with your friends, and I will see you soon with another delicious recipe. Bye for now.